Hello, everyone. My name is Sweta Ragbi. I am streaming live from Canada. Tell me where you're watching us from. I have amazing guests today, and we're going to talk about why we are overlooking on startups and why are we just thinking about the employers of the choice or top company in Canada, especially to the newcomers. We're going to go through the pros and cons and working in the startups. I'm going to bring my guest. Give me 1 minute. I'd like you to comment and share this live to whoever might benefit from this session today. You can also subscribe. If you can't watch it right now, you can always go back and watch it on our YouTube channel, also on a LinkedIn Live as well. My guest today, I've worked with him in the past. And if you can hear me, let me know, because I feel like I lost my guest. But let me know if you can hear me. Perfect. Okay, he's back here. All right. So I've worked with him in the past, and I was quite surprised when he moved from corporate world to the startups company. And I wanted to bring him live and talk about it. Why would someone leave the senior leadership role and go to the startups? Let's bring Sid. Sid, are you ready? He's back stage. I'm going to bring him.
Yeah.
Hello, Sid. Welcome to my live show. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Sweta. Firstly, guys, it's an absolute privilege to have the opportunity to pay it forward. Uh, you may not know me if you have not read through my LinkedIn profile yet, but I too have immigrated to Canada, and I immigrated back in 2008. I immigrated at a time when LinkedIn wasn't really used as much. You still had to, believe it or not, for some jobs, mail in a resume. And emails were the only other things that you could use. And I struggled. It took me 6 months to find a job, and this is despite having an undergrad in Canada and a master's from England. So I was lucky that I got a break, and there were many through my journey who've helped me. And one thing that I do like to do is pay it forward when I have an opportunity. And so this opportunity is a personal opportunity for me to sort of always extend what many before me have extended to me, and many like us. So that's just why I like to do this. So in terms of flow, do you want me to get right into a bit more about myself, or how do you?
Absolutely. Tell us, like, why did you decide to move from corporate world, senior leadership role? You're doing amazing, to startups. I was shocked as well at the same time.
Yeah. So so as I mentioned, I moved here in 2008. It took me a while to really break in and actually understand the lingo. I started slow, but I made sure I was very clear about what I wanted. And what I did was, over the last 10 to 15 years, I've really focused on learning as much as I can. And that is something that has really stayed with me throughout my entire career. And so I've worked at very large organizations in Canada, and often found myself doing things that nobody really wanted to do. That is, trying something new and innovative in that business. And each career opportunity has opened up according to that for me, because I was willing to take that risk. And again, as immigrants, we left our home countries to move to a new country, start a family, meet somebody here, and build something brand new, right? So you'd be surprised when you dig just a little bit in, you will recognize that there's so much more that you have in you to take a risk. So I was with an organization called PC Financial until early 2020. Everything was going perfect, and I really enjoyed it. I had a great team. I worked with fantastic individuals. But deep down, I felt, I really want to go out there and build something new. I had, you know, hit so many milestones in my careers, and as an immigrant, I really felt, this is a time I should take a risk. I have two younger children, and they're still not 10, or even ready for university for that said. And I said, I can take at least 2 years out of my career to do a passion project. And a passion project was, I don't want to regret saying someday that I never worked for a startup, or I never tried taking a risk in my career as bold as going and building a new technology. And luck may have it, I got in touch with some people through LinkedIn, and one conversation led to another. And about 3 months after, I landed a role as a product owner at a startup. And in this startup, and I'll get more into it, we are a banking as a service startup. And I'll speak to, if you care about the technology, at a later point. But in a nutshell, with this startup, we just got acquired in November as well. So 9 months into the job, our company got acquired, and I was very fortunate to be at a company where, one, there were many like me who wanted the same thing and the same drive. and wanted to build something. And our success, and we were successful in getting acquired. With that said, Sweta, are you fine if I get into it? Sorry, I can't see, I don't have a second screen, so I don't know if there are any questions. So please.
No, not far. For those of you who have any questions, we'll take that at the end of the session. We are most likely going to be here until 30 minutes, and he's going to go through the slides, why startups, and we're going to take the Q&A right after that, okay? So when you're ready, do you want to go?
Yeah, so folks, just again, as you think about startups, we have this image that startups are tech companies. Startups are any and every business that's starting from the ground up. I want to share a few simple stats here. In Canada, right before the pandemic, we had seen about 801,000 active startups or companies that are just open. These are small companies or small businesses. Right? A startup is a small business. On average, about 95,000 are founded a year. 95,000 businesses. I won't get into what it means by day and hour, but when you double check on it, right? Canada is ranked amongst the top 15 most entrepreneurial economies globally. 40% of new businesses are opened by immigrants just like us, right? So just let that sink in. Like I touched on earlier, we have already bet on ourselves and said we're going to build a future somewhere abroad. Many like us, 4 out of 10 of us, are coming out and actually starting a business in Canada. And that is wonderful, right? Like you are not alone in saying I want to do this. There are many like us who are doing it actively. And what's really important is, we tend to think about how many risks we can take. In reality, about 20% of all new businesses will fail within the first year. And that's normal, that's expected, right? But about 86% make it to year two. And that's a pretty good sign. So you should, when you put on that hat and saying, I just moved, I just want a steady paycheck while I settle down, ask yourself, why are you in thinking like that? If only 20% fail, I should learn how to pick the winners and understand, am I going to work for a startup that is truly building a product for the market that we need? Below, I've just listed a few companies that are actual household names. These are all Canadian startups, all started in the 2010s, right? Shopify, Skip the Dishes, Simple, Neo Financial. This is Ada, which is also a Canadian company that does chatbots, Flinks, which got acquired, and FreshBooks, which is a software company as well. So these are just to list a few companies that have started in our backyard here in Canada 10 to 15 years ago. That's when I immigrated, right? And these are success stories, right? These are very, very big success stories. These ones are true examples of why more investments come here and why we as new immigrants should consider looking at opportunities to work in a startup as well. So what we tend to think, so there's one thing to think about statistics. There's another thing to think about what is our understanding of what life at a startup is like. We have friends, or we have friends who are friends usually, who say, well, yeah, startups are really, trying to solve this puzzle that nobody else is doing. They're building something very unique. And if they're lucky, they'll scale. Oh, but I should level set and tell you that, guys, work-life balance is non-existent. You're working 12 to 14 hours a day. Oh, and you need to learn how to code, and then you'll definitely get rich. In reality, none of that is true. I can tell you that for a fact. I'm coming close to a year now, and that is not the case. At least not the case with majority of my colleagues who are working at other startups, who own a few startups. That is not the case. In reality, yeah, they are solving a problem. They are at the initial stage, right? They're starting a business. So there is going to be a need to roll up your sleeves, but that does not mean you need to put in 15 to 20 hours a day working. You do have work-life balance. As I mentioned, I have 2 kids. I would not have gone to a startup if I knew I was going to work 12 hours a day. That is the honest truth here, right? My kids are growing up and I really want to be there for them. And I really want to enjoy life as well, right? As immigrants, you're going to have the first few years where you are going to, you know, feel down. You're going to get depressed. It's taking you too long to buy a car, to get that house, to land the right job, while all your friends back home and family members are doing so much better. So you really want to take the time to enjoy. So I came to this point, and I really have to be quite transparent. Startups are trying to solve a problem. They are at the starting point. Yes, you will be putting in a few extra hours, but they're not 12 hours. You will not get market pay either. Quite transparently, you will get equity. Again, when I say market pay, I'm talking about total compensation. You might not get the stock plan. You will not get the pension plan, things of that nature. That's because they don't have those to offer yet. They're not publicly traded. So what they offer you is equity. So they give you a share of the company. And we'll get more into it on how you negotiate these things next. But what they will show you is you're agile. As I mentioned, as they're starting up, there's only a small team. I think I was employee number 14 or 17 when I started. We went all the way up to 60 people in a matter of 9 months of me being here. I did every job to any job, from HR to product to, I can't remember, I think analytics at one point. I did everything. It really helped me. It showed me how nimble and how talented I really am, how open minded I am. And it's very good for your confidence. You really don't need to know how to code. Quite frankly, I've not had to code even once, right? Where there are issues, and quite honest, it has to be said quite transparently, is as you work at a startup, and depending in the first 3 years where they are, what we often struggle with is understanding what is a sustainable business model. So that's where I talk about you need to be very nimble and you have to have an open mind. Well, I'm going to a startup. I can't expect it to function like a large organization. I have to understand there are sometimes I will have to do things that are not part of my job description or will not be would be what I would deem sometimes, the mentality kicks in, well, it's not my job, it's somebody junior than me. No, you have to roll up your sleeves, and those are things you have to be right, honest about that you'll have to do. And it's a 50-50 chance, guys, failure and success. We made it through, and as you saw, 20% will fail the first year. We were in our second year and we made it through and we got acquired. So that's what it really is like being at a startup. There is work. You will not get the big bank benefits or big organization benefits. You will get ownership into the company, right? But you will really learn a lot. And once you make it past that first year, trust me, you would look like a different person on the other side. So just to summarize, startups are nothing but an early stage company. When I talk about early stage companies in the first 3 years, if they make it past first year, it's a great sign. They make it past the second year, it's even better, right? Like we've seen 86% of them at least make it a year or two. So it's a fantastic sign because that means they become even more attractive for what we call Series A funding. That's when real venture capitalists come in and start throwing money at us. They have about 2 to 3 founders. Nobody's really started by themselves. You need somebody who's just as crazy as you to start this business and build something brand new. They, as I mentioned, will have less than 50 employees at any given point. So there is a need for you to be open-minded and doing a lot. Our goal is very, very simple. We need to grow. We need to scale. So how do we drive more business? So you're always thinking out as a business owner, not as a person who's just doing his or her job, right? Um, and again, you're going to be solving something really important, a very unique solution, and you'll have all eyes on you. Again, when I started in this job, the company I'm on, I think we're the only players in Canada that do it. We have a list of 50 clients. The minute they found out, we never thought these clients even existed. And then you're actually working with these clients to make sure it comes to life. So great. I gave you a whole spiel. Some of you are convinced this is for you. Some of you are on the fence, and half of you have said this is not for me. And that's okay. But I do want to say, if you were thinking about a startup again, just remember the risk versus reward equation. And I'm going to walk you through it. Firstly, we've all been in that position where people will say, well, you don't have Canadian experience. So you may want to apply for a large organization in Canada. They'll look at your resume and say, well, you don't have Canadian experience. So thank you. But no, thank you. I cannot recruit you at this point. And you will go through one job after the other and you'll get the same. I got it despite having a degree in England, Canada, and experience in England, right? And then somebody just took a bet on me and I got lucky in that position. What startups offer is startups tend to have a lot of offshore teams. These offshore teams are based in our home countries like India, right? So they have worked with us. They understand who we are, how we work, what our work ethic is. So the barrier to entry is a lot simpler, easier, and lighter for us to work with. We have a much more open-minded leadership team in Canada that understands how folks from high immigrant countries actually work, what their work ethic is. So you've got an upper hand coming in. They also understand that you're trying to get a job and you'd be very open-minded at doing a lot of things. So it's a win-win for both parties involved. And most importantly, you want your first job that pays you. You've got it, right? Now you can start building that Canadian experience, and you love being at the startup. Great for you. If it doesn't, you have the opportunity to move. At least you can show you were at a startup. You bet on yourself. You build something. My favorite thing about working at a startup are the people. As I mentioned earlier, people, good startups take a lot of time in hiring the right people. And I'm very lucky to be at a very good startup that's taken a lot of time in hiring. And what our focus is, everybody knows wants the same thing, that is we want to succeed. So nobody here doesn't, nobody like thinks, oh, I just need a paycheck. Everybody comes in and they say, how can I help make this place better and get the product out the door? I truly feel this is the only place I've actually been at that thinks like that. And more I speak with other startups, they have a team culture similar to that. Finally, and this is really, really important, you know, you will hear different words, same things called different things in different parts of the world. And you're sitting in that meeting. This happened to me. I'm sitting in meetings when I moved to Canada, my first job in Canada. I didn't understand half the things they were saying. But when I looked at it in practice, oh, we called it something else. So by getting into a startup, you're going to do so many new things, and you're going to be playing different roles at any given point. You just start upskilling yourself for free while you're in the job. You're getting paid to really learn the job. It helps you market yourself in the long term. So think about putting in a year to maybe 2 years at a startup, and it's equal to, in my professional opinion, it's equal to 5 years of work experience at a large corporation. That's my selling point on why you need to choose a startup, especially for newcomers. So where do you start? I want to just be mindful of time. So where do you start here is you always have to understand what can you do today, right? That could include things like what is my current skill set? How much risk do I really want to take? Am I open? Do I understand the space well? So what are you prepared for? Then ask yourself, what do the next 2 or 3 years look like? So I'll go back to a question Sweta asked: why did I leave corporate for a startup right when everything was going really, really well for me? Well, I focused on what could I do at that point. So back in Jan of last year, I sat down and I reflected, said I've learned a bit about every function. In large organizations, I only get one function or one job to work on, and that's it. But I have this hunger that I want to do everything. So I said, okay, I can only do this thing. I want to do everything. I won't get that opportunity in a big organization, in one job or in one role. So I want to do more. So I sort of evaluated from that. Then I asked, what do I want to do over the next 2 to 3 years? So it became a passion project. I've always felt the urge to work on something from the ground up. So startup is where it came in. I wanted to work in financial services, which is my area of expertise. I've been in the space for about 10 years now, and I continued in the space, right? Third, I wanted to focus on building new technologies. My technology background is very light. And I said, wow, this is a startup that wants people with business backgrounds to help technology people visualize how that can come to life. Like, okay, maybe there's a nice fit here. So I wanted to learn technology on the job, an upskilling opportunity for me. So those were things I evaluated. How do I really improve my own skill set and come in? And so when I speak to potential recruiters that reach out to me regularly now, one time they wouldn't. Now when they do, they're like, so you understand things like agile, you work with new technologies, you bet on yourself as well. As when you left a corporate job for a startup, you took that risk. There's a level of interest that my so-called story has attached to it. And then I asked myself, what do I really want to learn? Like I touched on, and more importantly, I didn't make this decision independently. I have a family to take care of. I had to ask my wife. I had to think about what does it mean for her life? What does it mean for kids? And this is in the middle of the pandemic. Can we afford the mortgage payments if the company goes bankrupt? Things like that. So these are all the commitments you need to evaluate, right? So that's how you really need to do. Ask yourself these very honest questions. Have a conversation with somebody who really knows you well to help you understand that. Because moving to a startup is not a small decision. There is work cut out, but it's not 14 hours a day. I can tell you that. Once you open your mind and saying, I know what I want, you will very easily find the right fit. As I mentioned, use LinkedIn. The way you use LinkedIn is not by reaching out to people. Write about a topic that interests you. Read about topics that others post, right, on something that interests you, and then comment and start engaging with them. That's how I started. I started engaging with people on topics that they write about. that interest me. And then we build a connection, say, hey, let's have a conversation. Really like to see we're doing this, or I'm interested in this. What are some of your thoughts? And more importantly, always seek an opportunity, not a job. When I go out there, I don't ask, do you have a job? I ask, I'm looking for a leadership role to scale your product management team. I don't ask for a job. So, hey, is there people leadership involved? Are you trying to build something, or are you trying to keep things as is? If you're keeping things as is, then it's not for me. If it's people leadership plus the opportunity to build something new, then yes, consider me. That's what I usually tell them. Then they say, okay, so I think I might have a job. Would you be open to this? Then they come up with options. And that's how I highly recommend it. It may seem very abnormal for many of us who come from countries where you have to ask for a job. In North America, you talk about opportunities. Like you talk about, hey, I am looking for this. This is my list of things. Do you have anything that remotely matches this? Right? Like, what are you thinking about? Where's your business going? People like to have a conversation. They don't, rather than answering questions. Right? When you ask for a job, you're asking a yes or no question. When you ask for an opportunity, it's a conversation, and you can be very fluid. So after you're bored with me saying all of this, if you want to read about this, these are 4 sites I highly recommend. Just look at the top 15 startups to work at in Canada. I've looked at every one of them. They're really good. Lighthouse Labs is another website that also publishes different rankings, much longer list than 15. TechTO is is a startups Toronto a LinkedIn page. They actually have recruitment nights, and they help job seekers there too. So I highly recommend going there. Beta Kit is a news publication on all things startups in North America, specifically Toronto and in Canada. Highly recommend looking at this. Uh, Again, startup community in Canada is extremely good. When I was considering this opportunity, I reached out to a friend of mine who armed me with how to think about startups, and this was exactly a year ago. So I'm going to give him credit and say these are questions he showed me on how to negotiate with a startup. So now you've gone through everything, you've made a decision, you've met with the recruiter, you've met with the founders, you want to take the job, right? Now they're going to come up to you with an offer. This is, again, very unique about working with a startup. You have to ask them a set of questions. Types of questions you need to ask them is, how many shares have you issued? So at the end of the day, a company's value is declared based on the number of shares they have and the value of those shares. So the company I work at, when I joined, they had 10 million shares issued. Again, those shares had $0 in value. So then I asked, how many shares are you going to have out there? You have 10 million shares. Obviously, then I ask, how many shares are with the investors? How many shares are with the founders? Then I asked, how much money do you really have in the bank? And how much runway do you have? So a lingo that we use here is, what is your current runway? So how much money do you have, and how long will it last you? So to do business, some businesses spend $1 million a month for staffing and running technology and things like that. So you got to ask them, do you actually have money? Or are you saying that every 3 months we'll evaluate? If every 3 months, I would not do it, and I'd recommend you don't do it, right? So I'd say, look at a company that at least has 16 to 18 months of money in the account, so that you can feel secure that they can at least pay you in case they were going bankrupt, right? So ask that question. And it is again, it feels very challenging to ask such a question, but it is a very normal question. Good negotiators will ask, who owns the company? How much is it owned? Who's your largest investor? How much money do you really have, right? What are your critical milestones? When do you want to be live? If they say we're going to build a technology for 5 years, in 5 years, things change, right? So questions you need to really ask. And then ask them who owns, if you want to go even deep, dig deeper, is who's your board of directors? Like if you find out the board of directors are from big corporations, then you understand that there's somebody holding the founders accountable for the decisions they're making. The board of directors are people who hold founders accountable. So it's these are really critical questions to ask. We don't ask these questions of large organizations because they are large, they're established, right? They already have been in the market for 100 years and they're fine. But when you're getting at the ground floor of a new business, you need to ask, do you have money? How many people own it? Where's your money coming from? How long will this last? Who's holding you accountable? These are very normal questions. Again, very normal to ask these questions. Now you've been satisfied with everything. Don't look at your base pay alone. Look at your total compensation. Do have an idea of the base pay, and I highly recommend visiting levels.fyi. It's a really fantastic site. Type the title, type the company's name. It'll show you what people really make in established companies, not in startups, in established companies, and then half it. So, as an example, cybersecurity professionals at companies like, say, Facebook, they make upwards of $500,000. At startups, they'll likely make 250,000, right? But again, it's a very, very specific niche, so the pay is extremely high, right? A product owner at Facebook would make, say, 200. Product owner at a startup could make anywhere from 80 to 150. I always say ask for equity, own a piece of the company, because the day the company sells, you actually get rich. Just take an example of Shopify. Shopify is a Canadian startup that really hit, a huge height during the pandemic. They had a mass exit right after their stocks went close to $2,000. That's because a lot of their staff became overnight multimillionaires. Right? Again, this is a unique case. This is a very, very unique case. My company sold, I got paid out. I didn't make $1 million, but I made a good amount for 9 months of work. Right? I was very happy. And then again, as I said, focus only on total compensation. I wanted to reiterate that. Just focus on that. That's honestly everything I had to share at this point. I hope I've added some value.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think if you've learned so much today about startups, you know what? Put the comments in there. Number 3, so we understand, and maybe reach out to Sid directly and me as well. What were your takeaway? Are you going to, target the startups? Question for you, Sid. And we are all from banking world, you and I. We've always worked in banking world. You've worked in the tech company as well. So I want you to talk to me about what is this BaaS Fintech, for those people who don't understand how it works. Yeah. How about you dumb it down to the people who would understand in 10 years old would understand. I asked you that question before as well. I talked to my client and I tell them, can you dumb it down so the 10 years old could understand as well? So what exactly is this industry?
So I'll tell you what fintech is, right? Fintech is a very common terminology used between Europe and North America. I think also in India now it's really big, but it's nothing but financial technology. Fintech is a short form of financial technology, which is that technology and innovation that aims to compete with traditional financial methods in delivering a financial service. Again, that sounded like a mouthful, but it's basically saying if the big banks have been serving you in way X, financial technology is going to use technology to make that even simpler. That's what it really is. Right? Think about when you had to send money. It was Western Union. Now you can do it with a click of a button through PayPal. Email the money. It's as simple as that. So that's what fintech is. Now, I touched on that I work for something called a BaaS, or a banking as a service. Now, as a service is a very common terminology. There's data as a service, payments as a service, software as a service, or SaaS, BaaS. There's a whole lot of names. BaaS is nothing but banking as a service. Basically, it is taking banking, and banking is made of banking licenses, regulation, things like that, and deconstructing it. So breaking it down into small services and then selling those small services as a subscription. So if tomorrow Sweta decides she wants to start the Technado Bank or Technado Financial, she does not need a team of 100 people behind her in her actual building. What she needs is just to build her business, and what she can do is come and subscribe to those services. I have 100 people behind me who have built those services. So she does not need a back-end team to do anything. That's me putting it very loosely on what BaaS is.
So now a question for you. I get a lot of clients because I'm from the banking world, right? And I do have a lot of clients who actually hired me for job search strategies. And I've been noticing everyone wants to come here and work for the top bank, right? And I've been because we do have a program on a marketing plan. I sit down together with them and I say, how about, you know what, let's not worry about the top banks out there. You know, the grass is always not greener. You don't think that, you know, it's going to be flawless. Machine's going to break. The onboarding might not be the right one. I've worked through all these, right?
Yeah.
So then I tell them, okay, how about you start looking at the outsourcing company, or, you know, companies like BAS, or like the vendors find it out. And that's a part of our marketing plan. Now, do you recommend that for newcomers looking through the company like yours, you
Yeah.
know, where they can start it? So what are the roles they can target? If let's talk to the newcomers who are going to be joining as a new immigrant in Canada soon. What are the things are available, let's say title wise? Can you walk through it? I know that you've recently hired some folks as
Yeah.
well. So walk us through.
So I would first start by saying, think about your core skill set, understand what you can do or you can't do. So I see, like, for example, Anmol in there. So I'll use his example. So he goes, his brother's got 3 years of experience in project management. Great. So he's got 3 years of experience, but he's not getting any consideration. So if he was to enter Canada now, I would first ask him to. Project management is a very specialist field in Canada or in North America. That is, you either need a what we call a PMP certification, and now they're going to something called Agile. So again, I've said two things that might be fairly new to Anmol's brother. So when you think about, in his case, his brother first needs to assess what are the requirements for the new market he's going on. There's a reason likely he's not getting a response. It could not just be he does not have Canadian experience. Does he have the right credentials to enter the market? Right? That's number one. Number two, he really needs to take time and update that resume. I'll give you a very simple example. When I moved from England, my resume from England was not Canadian, not in the Canadian standard. Right? So you need to invest in that. And I think every 5 to 6 years, I invest in resume writing. And I pay somebody about $250 to just do my resume writing every 5 to 6 years, because I've done my job with my head down for so long, I've forgotten how to talk about it. So I hire somebody to tell me how good I am. It's really what I do. I paid somebody 2 years ago, and then I went to Sweater. I said, Sweater, can you just review it? And she did it. She did a review for me too, and she assessed. Right, those are services I highly encourage. So again, in Anmol's case, is his brother needs to understand, does he have the right credentials? If he has the right credentials, that's great. Then there's a gap in his resume. If the gap is not in his resume, his job searching strategy is wrong. Right there, it's not down to just the company's not responding. There's also, you have to self-reflect. Right, I remember a time when I was applying for jobs like 3 years ago. I want to be a director at this place and that place, and I've been in Canada 10 years at this point, and I wasn't getting those jobs. Well, I wasn't getting those jobs because I was not speaking for the job I wanted. Right, I was speaking for the job I was doing. Those are, and this is somebody who's been here for, it happens to people who are here. Right, it happens to me. So I highly recommend that assessment on that front. So invest in yourself. And when I'm hiring out there, I look at, do you have the certification? That's if it's required for the job. Because I want to think about how much work do I have to put into you for you to do your job. If it's a lot, I'm not going to. And not having Canadian experience is not a criteria. Anybody I speak to having Canadian experience is not a criteria. What they want to see is, are you able to understand it faster? Even today, when I make job applications, I create a one-page slide doing a competitive analysis of the company I'm applying to. Why? So that the hiring manager, not the recruiter, the hiring manager will see that. So if I want to go from a banking sector, say, to a software sector, they're, night and day. So for that software company, I will actually do a one-page slide saying, hey, these are your competitors. This is what they do. This is where your gap is. Now, what message I am sending them is, I don't know anything about your space through experience, but I do have the drive to do it. And I kid you not, that's open jobs for me. I got a job at PC Financial, which is owned by Canada's largest grocer, because I actually put together a presentation. I went through the process of presenting it. In fact, I think one of the people I even interviewed with is on this call. I had to interview with him. I had to show him, here's what is my understanding of your business. Here's what they do, and things around that. You have to go the extra mile. Don't take your status for granted, whether you're here or coming from there. You have to put in the extra effort. So I think that's a long way of answering your questions. Whether is when they don't think about title, think about, do I have first minimum credentials? One, two, what am I doing to bridge the gap? That is, am I showing I have an understanding of that space? Because yes, as new immigrants, you might have a few things working against you, but put it on paper. What are you doing to counter that?
Okay, question for you again to go back to it. What are the roles that company like yours are potentially looking for to hire someone, right? What are the roles? Do you have a title that it's already been forecasted, or what kind of people are in need in the company like yours? Because
So a company like ours, we're a technology company, quite frankly, a financial technology, fintech. So, but we focus more on hiring developers. Developers don't really need to go to school; they need to know how to code, right? I know it sounds sort of contradictory to what I say. You don't need to know how to code. I'm talking about what we have open right now. Now, we also should be having product owner and business analyst roles opening soon. Um, for those, you need to know how to use Jira. You need to understand what agile practices are, right? Those are core tools that you need to be aware of. How do you use them? How do you write a story in Jira so that a developer can use it? So those are requirements I look at, and those are the titles that we anticipate will open up within the next month or two. Just because we just got acquired right before the holidays, we're still going through our strategies to level set. But I do know those are two areas we should have roles opening up in.
Okay, can you tell me product owner, like in 1 minute, less than 1 minute? What is the day-to-day responsibility and role like for a product owner?
That's honestly a very loaded question. But a product owner is somebody who cares about everything about the product they're selling. So if I was, I'm going to use Starbucks, right? If I was the product owner for the Starbucks coffee. So I would care not only about the beans that where the beans are sourced from, so which part of the world the beans come from, but I would care about how are they kept, what kind of cup they come in, what's the lid you use, what kind of milk or cream that you use, what kind of sugar do we offer. That's what a product owner really thinks about. They think about the 360, the whole thing, the whole packet. So when I think about, I'm the product owner for, say, core banking or say a checking account, I think about everything. How's money deposited? How's money, removed? So withdrawn from the account. Where do I access? Those are all the things you think about as a product owner. You really are the CEO of your product, put loosely.
Okay, good to know that. So let me see if there's any Q&A. Let's see here. Anmol has a follow-up question. So I guess he completed his studies there. I don't know the gist of it, but like it depends if he's recent grad or does he have any experience, or maybe did he do the co-op? Is there anything for, one size does not fit all. I mean, experience versus someone who just graduated versus someone who's had the co-op under their belt. It's completely different strategies. So I don't want to sit here and say, hey, you know what, PMP would do it all, because most of the time PMP doesn't even matter. Certification doesn't even matter. And I know that me and you said we were talking about it in offline. Sometimes degree doesn't even matter. What do you think about that?
So again, Anmol, like in your brother's case, we don't know full details of what's the quality of his application, right? So it's all down to what is he submitting, how is he submitting, and what kind of roles is he applying for? Is he even meeting the minimum requirements? What's his LinkedIn profile look like? Majority of people are starting to find jobs through LinkedIn, right? I think that stat just keeps going higher and higher. So what's his overall presence on all the required professional sites like LinkedIn, as well as his resume? So again, I don't want to mislead you with a specific answer, but I can just say is you need to look at it on a case by case basis. We hire students all the time, and again, I'm not going to call out the colleague of mine who actually interviewed me for my last role who's on this, but he's a very active recruiter, and he recruits people onto his team that have not even spent a day in digital. right? That's because he's looking for certain skills. Again, every recruiter is different. Every hiring manager is different. And so you have to be. It's how you package. And I every time I make an application for a job, I package a whole new look and feel for it.
That's
I don't
exactly
have.
what's supposed to. Like, thank you for that advice because one size does not fit all, and you have to customize it. And I know that you've hired people. Let's talk about as a hiring manager. What are the three things that you look for?
So when I'm hiring, I look at most important thing for me is, are they sure about do they have clarity on what they want to learn, not what they want to do. What do they want to learn? Because that's the gap I need to fill in the job. I don't want to wake up knowing that I've hired somebody whom I have to hold their hand for about 80% of their job, right? So I need to understand, do they know what they want to learn? They need to know all of those things. I look for that clarity. And how do I get that? I genuinely go onto their LinkedIn page. I go to their LinkedIn page and I look at how they speak to their own work. I look at how they speak about themselves. I look at how they engage on topics of that interest them. Now, I happen to be in a space where applicants tend to do a lot of that. That's number one. Number two, again, self-awareness. I don't look for successes. So if somebody is writing that they won, they won this award, they did A, B, and C, I try to sort of start losing interest. I try to look for self-awareness in the resume. Like, we tried to roll something out. It didn't really work, right? When you think about an interview, a behavioral question is, they ask you this behavioral question of what happens if something doesn't work. That's because your resume did not answer that. That truly is the case, right? So I look for that humility and that self-awareness in the resume. The third thing, and this is something you can only determine through the interview process, is I look for a team fit.
What is team fit? I'm going to put you on a hot
A
seat. This
team
is
fit is,
something.
can you
Yeah.
work with everybody? Like, do you have a style? No, we don't encourage herd mentality. If everybody thinks the same, we've got an issue. We will never really be successful. But what we really want here is are you effective at challenging? Are you effective at understanding another person's problem? Can you think differently?
How do you measure that? I'm going to
Well,
put
you
you on
ask
a hot
them,
seat.
Kate, like you put them on the spot. So like, I'll give a very simple. I asked this question. Um, you know, you are I'm a doctor, and I've hired you as a consultant, and your job, and I'm noticing that my patients are complaining about high wait times. How do I solve for this? I will see how, not for your solution. I'll see how you think about it, right? My team's given me an answer already. I've already spoken to them, so I'm trying to see, and I know how they think about things as well. So if you come back and say, so if you have, you come back and you tell me, well, so don't keep appointments so close. I'm like, okay, that's a given. What else? I'm looking for at least five answers there, three to
So
five.
you're thinking of like, do you ask those questions? Because normally employers are, falling back on behavioral type of questions, right? So what they say is past predicts the future. So I know I've always focused on behavior. So do you normally tell people to practice, a couple of answers? Like, what would you do kind of questions too? I know the questions are out there as well. I prep like, both on my interview coaching, but how many answers do you feel comfortable? Like, let's
So
say, do you need them on?
I will end up contradicting you here. Is I always feel like when you prep too much, you end up making more mistakes because then you sound rehearsed. I genuinely, make sure you're not relying on your resume,
Yeah.
right? That's number one, because that will come through in the interview process. So just focus on what you know, right? Focus on communicating that in the most simplest format, right? Like saying, hey, you know what? I work at a company that that builds this technology that helps other non-banks become banks. Rather than me saying that we make, banking as a service technology, which confused all of you, right? Were we successful? Yeah, we managed to get two clients. This is what we did. This is how we did it. That's how I speak to it. So when you think about prepping, think about how you would speak to, a parent or somebody you've just met, right? Somebody you've just met. How would you speak about the job you do? Remember, you have to make a good impression.
Yeah.
So focus on the facts, keep it very, very crisp. And I personally, my rule of thumb is always speak in bullet points and take those pauses as you see fit. Like, always speak in bullet points. That has always worked for me. We did this, we did this, we did this. It helps me stay sane. I tend to also ask a lot of questions in interviews. So I'd encourage that when you prep for those kind of interview questions, you're going to get those typical. They're basically assessing you, how you think, how you act, and sometimes in specialist jobs they'll ask you a technical question, but they're usually looking for soft skills. Soft skills are very much, do you have empathy, so how you act, and how you think is just your critical thinking. So like I gave that example, I'm a doctor, I'm having patient complaints on X. What should I do? How should I measure it? Things like that. That's critical thinking. Um, Empathy is, you always get this question. It's surprising the amount of people ask this question, even though I find it ridiculous. Is uh, one of your teammates has a bad body odor. How are you
I've
going to tell
coached.
them?
I've
How are you
coached
going
my.
to tell them something, right? Whose job is it to tell them that? And how are
That's
you
a.
going to deal with that? It's just about that, right? And you can never answer that question correctly. I struggle to answer that question, so I can't give you my answer because I don't know. I don't have a good answer. But these are questions people look for because you have to work as a team. You're going to work with part of a big group, and so these are things people have to really get.
Okay, well, thank you so much. It was fun chatting with you. So, where can people find you normally, or can they reach out to you
Yeah,
if they have any
so
questions?
please just reach out to me via LinkedIn. I absolutely love connecting with people. Like I said, I when I moved to Canada, LinkedIn was so new that nobody was using it. You couldn't even find a job through LinkedIn back then. Um, and I've met a lot of people. So I've taken, it's a personal interest in me to pay it forward. Anmol, I highly recommend at least you reach out because I at least know of your case. Happy to have a chat with you and see what this means. For your brother's case. So just reach out to LinkedIn. It's the easiest way. I'm a little slow in responding. It's just because kids are home because of the pandemic, and so I'm just working 12 hours a day with my kids. Sorry, 24 hours a day with my kids now. So please don't get upset if I'm not accepting your invitation right away. Do not get upset if I'm taking too long to respond. It's been a busy start to the year because of the pandemic.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, for all our viewer right now, you can watch this later on in YouTube. Please go ahead and subscribe. I'm not sure if you know, I have monthly newsletter coming up soon. So I issued that 3 weeks ago. There's more than 64,000 subscriber already. Keep an eye on it. It's called Career Challenge. It's on my feature sections. Also, if you want to talk to me about job search, what's not working, what's going on, why are you not getting interviews, why are you not getting offers, let's chat. There's the appointment calendar right there. I'd be more than happy to assess it and see if we can work together and I can help you bounce back quickly. Whether you're a newcomer to Canada, you want to switch, or you're laid off and you want to bounce back quickly, let's just chat. Other than that, I thank you so much for tuning in today. And I just wanted to break this news. I got access to LinkedIn Audio Live. I'm one of the beta tester. I am planning to go LinkedIn Audio Live soon, next week, possibly starting from Wednesday, every Wednesday. So tune in, watch out for my events, and maybe you can hop in and ask me questions, Q&A, if you're a job seeker in Canada. Thank you so much for watching. Share this, comment on this, and reach out to me for any feedback. Thank you. You take care. Bye-bye. Sid, do you want to come in and say bye, or two, like, you have any
Yeah.
word?
Again, guys, please reach out. Happy to pay it forward. And CC Canada is wonderful. It's cold, but it's wonderful. You're gonna love living here and settling down here.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Right.